Vigilance. Here, I'm going to start with pharmacovigilance because it's the one that I think most of us have heard about before. This is Dr.Pius' stronghold. I am just going to give you a brief, and in case of questions, he'll be the one to respond to them. So, the essence of pharmacovigilance is the ideal of pharmacovigilance is to ensure that medication has no harm. That is in the ideal, but we all know that medication can cause harm. Now, as a pharmacist, as a healthcare professional, you can only add value by finding out what harm can come to someone and how exactly they can mitigate that harm. So the role of pharmacovigilance is to detect, assess, and mitigate any harm that can come due to taking drugs. So the definition: pharmacovigilance is the science and activities related to detection, assessment, and prevention of or any other drug related. Take these problems, assess them, and because at the end of the day, that is how you help them or the patient. Only way you can help them the only way you can help them is by figuring out how to mitigate the issues. So the role of pharmacovigilance at NDA is to do those 4 things that are highlighted in red. And as you can see, the role of the pharmacist there will be big because you call yourselves the expert of drugs, drug expert, or master of drugs, I don't know. But and you're supposed to be able to put together this information, assess this information to figure out how we can mitigate the problems related to drugs. So this is a picture of a reaction that happened to a patient here in Uganda, and what could have caused this? This is a patient who is probably sick of a disease, who's probably taking very many drugs, who's probably on bed rest. Drug? Is it the disease? Is it the hygiene or anything to do with the hospital? And that question can have very many answers. But the role of pharmacovigilance is to single out that this probably was caused by the drug. The scope of things that can cause this is very big. So we'll start by defining a few things. These are the major definitions in pharmacovigilance. Literally, what we all need to know. The first definition is the adverse event, which is any occurrence that presents during treatment. So, and it's an event. It may not specifically be a reaction, but it's an event that will happen while you're taking treatment. You not even have a relationship with the treatment. I'll explain that with an example. For example, someone can take drug. They can come to your pharmacy. They take a drug and they get involved in an accident after.
Recording in progress.
It probably has no relation. The first thing you say, oh, sorry, they got involved in an accident. Probably there's no relationship to the drug. Give them an antihistamine, one of those older generation ones, and probably they had no idea. You had no idea that they're a truck driver. They got drowsy while driving. They got into an accident. So that's an event. On the surface, it may look like to the drug, but it could probably have a relation to the drug. So now, an adverse drug reaction is response to a drug which is noxious and unintended and occurs at doses that are normally used, at the normal dose of the drug. Basically, an adverse drug reaction is something that is not intended. It is noxious at the correct dose of the drug. It's not an overdose. So that there is a relationship between the drug and response that has happened. So ideally, an adverse drug event is an adverse event, but that adverse event has a suspected causal link to the drug. Now, there's what I'm sure most of you would want to differentiate is between an adverse drug reaction and a side effect. And a side effect is an unintended effect occurring at the normal dose related to the pharmacological properties of the drug. It's an extension of pharmacological properties usually. For example, when you take metformin and you have hypoglycemia, it is the intended effect of the drug is not to cause hypoglycemia, but that is an extension of its pharmacological action, so it is. So the adverse drug reaction, on the other hand, may not have a very relatable effect with the pharmacological properties of the drug, but it is an outward is the reason why adverse events following immunization are critical is because, remember, an adverse drug reaction, you're giving a drug to a patient and they react to it. But now here, the difference is you're giving a vaccine and they're reacting towards it. So these ones are very critical as well. And when vaccinations was giving all sorts of reaction, all sorts of conspiracy theories about what is happening. People are saying metals were sticking to their immunization site and the like. So these are also very critical, and these are some of the most critical, most important definitions in pharmacovigilance. So as I had said earlier, the essence of pharmacovigilance is to detect, understand, and manage side effects. Manage adverse drug reactions. And of course, the earlier you detect them. So when you go through the life cycle of drugs, you remember that the drug comes from probably the lab, then into preclinical studies, animal models, then into clinical trials, then it comes finally to the general population. So some of these reactions may not be captured during the clinical trials or during the preclinical studies and the animal models and the like, but they'll come out in a larger population. The reasons are many, because, for example, in a clinical trial, you have specific participants who are fewer. They may be from a localized area. They may be of a specific race. So the data that comes out of clinical trials is very important, but it may not be representative of the data for the whole world. So that is why you will need to follow up these drugs even after they have gone onto the market. Secondly, after a clinical trial, when a clinical trial is being done, everywhere. So you may have information of a drug in Caucasians, you may have information of a drug in Africans, but you don't have it in white people. And even then, the drugs after the drugs have been registered, after they're being used when they're being used on the market, the way they are used in a clinical trial is so stringent, yet when they come out to the market, they are used in very many different ways, with very many comorbidities, with so much polypharmacy. So it is important that we continue following up these drugs, because many of these reactions can come out after the drugs. So basically, pharmacovigilance is following up of the safety profile of the drug even after the drug has come to the market. And the essence of all this is to ensure that you identify the risk and be able to mitigate the risk. So this is a picture of from in the 90s. I apologize for the spelling of the drug there. I am not the author of the picture, but I just wanted to use it as an example. We all know the thalidomide disaster very many years ago, and this drug was a wonder drug for morning sickness, and it was very good at taking out morning sickness in the first trimester of pregnancy. But later, there were many kids who were born with such congenital anomalies, with defects. And of course, at that time, no one would think about the relationship between the drug they took 6 months before even the time of delivery. So, but later, when they followed up reports on what was happening during the first trimester, they got to realize that most of the mothers that had taken thalidomide ended up having babies with such anomalies. So that is one of the classic examples of why pharmacovigilance is done, is that this effect related to a drug, and this is a drug that had been just these effects were not known by the time they actually happened. I think I've spoken a lot about the essence of pharmacovigilance, and now I think we can move into some of the things that the pharmacovigilance unit does here. So there are reactions that are considered serious and others are not considered serious. And the serious reactions are the ones that we have to put most effort on, because these are the serious adverse drug reactions are reactions that either lead to death or cause prolongation of hospitalization, or associated with birth defects like the one I've just mentioned, or an adverse drug reaction that causes partial or permanent disability or life-threatening. Those are called serious adverse drug reactions, and these cannot just be looked at lightly. If someone and they die, you'll have to do enough causality to ensure that the drug was not the cause of death. If it was, then it has to be considered serious, and we see how to mitigate it immediately, because this is someone's life you're dealing with. Or someone may take a drug and they tell you they can no longer hear, they can no longer see. Those disabilities are very critical. That is why the most emphasis is put on serious adverse drug reactions. So this is what our pharmacovigilance structure in Uganda looks like. And as you can tell by now, is that the issue is reporting. These adverse reactions cannot be synthesized in the lab. They cannot be predicted from data or something. They have to happen for you to be able to record them. And after you recorded them, they have to be reported. So the first thing is, when a reaction occurs, someone has to document it. And since we are the healthcare providers, along with many other healthcare providers in the world, we are supposed to report all these reactions through the different channels. So one, the patient reports to the healthcare provider. The healthcare provider reports to the National Drug Authority through many different platforms that I'm going to show you. So we have private drug facilities or private health facilities. Private drug facilities can be pharmacies and drug shops. You have private health facilities like hospitals and health from where the National Drug Authority can collect them. We have what we call a regional pharmacovigilance. Receive reports from the lower health centers and public domain. Then pharmacovigilance and documents them. An international, there's an international drug reactions. So what you see as UMC, WHO of a global reporting platform for pharmacovigilance. Now, the essence of all this is today you may have a patient who has a headache because you've given them gentamicin, but that is not one of the side effects, or that is not the intensity of the headache is not an expected thing that happens when you give someone gentamicin. So when you report that, tomorrow someone in Moroto, someone in Kawale, someone in Rubaga will, and before you know it, someone in another country has also reported that this gentamicin could have a problem. So two things could happen. Either it could be the brand, the batch, or it actually could be the drug itself. So you may find that it was not known, but later you realize that in patients who have this kind of condition, if you give them gentamicin in this way, they will react in this form, which adds to the information that is known about the drug. So now the essence of what NDA does is we receive the report and we analyze them, and we do what we call causality assessment, that assessing whether the drug definitely caused the reaction or probably or definitely did not cause the reaction. So after causality has been assessed, then we decide on what to do next. So I'll give an example of dolutegravir. Was one of the new drugs not so long ago was added onto the Uganda guidelines for HIV. And it was noted that many of the patients who moved to dolutegravir started getting hyperglycemia. So when all these reports were aggregated and put together, and reports from outside, from other countries, showed that dolutegravir can cause one of the effects that was not recorded earlier. Dolutegravir can cause hyperglycemia and can lead actually to diabetes. So the guidelines for the National Drug Authority, the guidelines for Ministry of Health changed to include a mitigation factor for whoever is PTG, they have to have their random blood sugar tested at specific intervals to ensure that these patients do not end up with the side effect. So this role starts with the patient and the health worker reporting, but the role of the National Drug Authority at the end of the day will come to the point of informing the health policy and getting to know that this drug can cause this effect, or this drug should actually be removed from the market because of what it does. So that is the process of pharmacovigilance. Take the data from the different sources, you assess, you make a conclusion, and then there has to be a mitigation for that. So that mitigation could involve deregistering the drug, because I think from what I mentioned earlier, thalidomide was one of the drugs then, but I'm sure none of us here has dispensed thalidomide before, because probably it did not go further. It was not used for that very role because it was removed. Then, so this is the overview of what happens in pharmacovigilance. You collect reports and you analyze them. You collect them and analyze them based on everything. Maybe literature literature about the drug, literature about the disease, literature about the population and all that. You analyze it until you figure out what exactly could be the cause. Then you communicate these to the patients, the public, international partners, and the like. So this is an example of what has come out of pharmacovigilance. As you can see in the slide, there are Chinese contraceptive pill linked to cancer. That is from NDA reviewing these reports, reviewing the profile of the product. Sometimes it involves the lab doing its part and coming up with something that this product has a risk, and that risk is named. Those are one of the outcomes of pharmacovigilance. Then you can see Indonesia bans all syrup, liquid medicines after experiencing deaths of 99 children. So unfortunately, many of these outcomes come after very serious implications like death. But the essence of the whole pharmacovigilance theme is to see to it that we protect what has happened, we protect our public from what has happened, also what has happened to everybody, because we think it was just a mistake. Is it about pharmacovigilance? I talked about reporting earlier. Who reports? All of us do. The information that is needed to report in it. We have a physical form, a WhatsApp number, an email, a QR code, an app, and the last one is interaction. Pharmacovigilance. It aggregates information regarding pharmacovigilance for the whole world. So this is what our form looks like, and it gives you details on what should be. It has information about the patient, information about the drug or the vaccine, information about all the other medical products the patient was taking, the description, the narrative of what happened, and any other lab tests that were done, and any action. The details of that we need more information. So that is what happens in pharmacovigilance. And the control of clinical trials relating is that are embedded in the National Drug Policy and Authority Act. So pharmacovigilance is I think I don't want to give us the exact section of the act that talks about it, but for clinical trials, I think is section 31, section 40 of the National Drug Policy and Authority Act that talks about National Drug Authority being the body that will authorize conduct of clinical trials relating to drugs. Then for medicines information and advertisements, that is section 33. So based on the National Drug Policy and Authority Act. So NDA does not just do things out of the blue, but they all have a legal mark. So about clinical trial, they're regulated and what NDA does exactly. And the rest are not going to be so long like pharmacovigilance, because pharmacovigilance had too many terms. But for clinical trials, I'll start intended to discover or verify clinical or pharmacovigilance. But this is a clinical trial, is a study of a drug in human beings. That is basically it.
I was in some Zoom here.
So basically clinical the clinical trial, again, if you look at the drug life cycle, there is to animal models, then you introduce the drug to human beings. But you don't just introduce it to every human being. It is done in phases. So you have phase 1 where you have healthy participants, few of them. Then you go to phase 2 where there are more. Then you go to phase 3. And then after market, you have phase 4. But the essence of the regulation of clinical trials, that is to ensure that phase have to be improved. You know, paracetamol is good for fever, but now you haven't, from what you've read and what you've done in the lab, you have an idea that paracetamol could be good for malaria. So you want to know whether it is good for malaria or not. So you have to conduct a clinical trial. Yes, you already know what it does for fever, but now you have to do a clinical trial to know whether it can also help with malaria. And you cannot just introduce it because of hearsay. You'll have to give us data. Now, but you'd have to conduct a clinical trial. You will do the 1, phase 2, phase 3 studies to know whether it actually has any effect on malaria. So that's one of the reasons why the clinical trials are done. So on the scientists is to get product. Then they provide basis for development and marketing of new drugs. When you decide to manufacture a drug, you will get to a point where you need evidence that this product works in a specific population, for example. So it works for everyone, but could it be good enough in pediatric patients? Could it be good enough in pregnant mothers? So you have to do a clinical trial before you introduce this product in any population. Then, of course, when we are doing assessment of products for to support that this product can do what they claim it does based on clinical trials that were done wherever it is that they were done. So the reason, one of the other things is a clinical trial to be accepted anywhere in the world, its data to be accepted anywhere in the world require most of the other authorities will ask whether that clinical trial was authorized by the regulator at that time. So the other reason is to aid decision-making processes. That is also on the side of the scientist or the health worker. you've seen studies where you say diclofenac is superior to paracetamol in probably pain relief. That helps in decision making, so that if you have 2-3 products, you can actually compare them. You provide the most reliable data to justify a healthcare decision. That means that if you do a clinical trial and you prove that your product actually treats this condition, reliable data. No lab data can beat a clinical trial results of a clinical trial, because that means that the product has actually been seen to do that in human beings in that population. The rational population is simple and explaining about clinical. Two things that look really small, but are the reason as to why we have this very big clinical trial. One, there's the scientist. Some of you guys here may be into research. So you're the researcher, you're the scientist. And you want to conduct the clinical trial. Two, there's the patient who needs a specific patient who is basically a business person who needs to make sales and make ends meet. Now, the researcher is interested in confirming that this drug works or it doesn't work, or it works in this way or it doesn't. So their emphasis is basically on the science. The patient is in need of care. So for them, they are actually the most vulnerable. Then the drug manufacturer needs to sell their drug. They cannot afford to make a loss. So when you're conducting a clinical trial, you have few patients. Many times you find these patients are in need of the service. For example, if you have a product right now that helps in the treatment of breast cancer, you're going to have patients who have breast cancer and no alternative treatment for breast cancer. So if you came and told them this drug works and I want you to take it so that I can see whether it works or it doesn't, they'll probably be inclined to taking the drug because they are in need. Then there's the person who made the drug who just needs to sell it. Trust me, for someone in manufacture, okay, not someone in manufacture, for any owner of a business, they want to sell their product. Are they selling it to the right person or not? That's not really a concern. Then the scientist probably just wants to know what happens so that they can say, let me give you the drug and we see exactly what happens at the end of the day so that I can document that I saw. But remember, the patient has rights. This is a fellow human being who cannot be used as a lab rat. So the essence of the regulator is to look at the practices and the data regarding the clinical trial and make a decision on whether the patients are not being exploited. For example, you cannot, if you're to do a clinical trial, you cannot do a clinical trial for a product in a condition that has already been established. For example, you know that diclofenac is used in pain relief, but you have a clinical trial and you want to see whether diclofenac is used for pain relief. This information is cannot subject patients to a clinical trial, or yet what you're trying to find out has already been established either elsewhere or already in this population. Then you have issues of what? Patient rights. that are usually handled by the ethics committees, but here every patient can decide to join the trial or not to join the trial, when to join and when not to join, or when to leave the trial. Those are all their rights. So as someone who's conducting the clinical trial, your interest may be in making sure that this patient takes the vaccine or the drug that you're giving them. Yet the patient may have an idea. For example, I'll give COVID vaccination. If you are enrolled in a study to do that was conducting a COVID vaccination, you would start by saying, okay, well, let me take the vaccine. But when it comes to the time of vaccination, you may change your mind. And of course, the scientists won't want you to change your mind at the time of vaccination because they need you to get vaccinated. But you have a right to refuse vaccination and leave the study at any point you feel like. So the regulator comes in to ensure that the patient's rights and safety are taken care of. And then the second thing is the data integrity. What we're trying to avoid here is someone going out and cooking results in their room, and they come and present the results that this product actually works. I'm sure many of us have done, all of us, the research. We went to the room and wrote down whatever we wrote down and presented, and actually I have now graduated, yet some of the data we presented was actually not accurate. Now that risk cannot be taken for a drug, because in the event that you give us wrong data or data that is biased, at the end of the day, the clinical trial is going to get the product registered. The product is going to be used all over the country based on a hoax. So that's the main reason as to why NDA regulates clinical trials. So the process is a very long one. The activities are quite many, but I'll try to summarize them like this. So what happens is the applicant submits to NDA a protocol, an investigator's brochure, and many other documents explaining what exactly they want to do and how they want to do it. So that's the clinical trial application. And then the NDA reviews the application, reviews the data regarding the drugs, the data regarding the conditions, the data regarding the patient's safety and rights, and approves the clinical trial. At the end of the day, either approve, reject, or query the application. A query is just a request for further information. And once the applicant responds to the query, they can either be rejected or approved. So what happens is, after NDA has approved the clinical trial, they go ahead and inspect the site where the clinical trial is going to be performed. For example, we have many clinical research organizations. I'm sure you know JCRC, IDRC, IDI, MILDME, and the like. There are some clinical trials that are actually conducted in public hospitals, in any of the public hospitals. NDA comes to the site to see that the clinical trial is going to be conducted correctly, because what happens in a clinical trial is quite different from what happens in clinical practice. For example, in a clinical trial, every patient has to give informed consent. This has to be done in a private room where the patient can give consent without being coerced. And in the event that they don't understand what is written in the consent form, they will have to request for someone to translate for them, then they have to understand before they give the consent. But if you go into a public hospital where many of you are working right now, you may fail to get a room, a specific room where to do informed consent. So NDA, if you decided to do a clinical trial, NDA would come and assess, and for example, they would say you actually have no private place where someone can take informed consent. So something has to be done about that. So that is one of the things that it can be queried and the like. You may be trying to do a clinical trial in a vaccine that requires to be kept in cold chain conditions, and yet your facility itself has no electricity and has no fridge. So those are some of the things that NDA does. So at the end of the day, if all the data is satisfactory, the clinical trial is approved. Now, after approval, when the study is ongoing, the study is inspected to see that what is being conducted, what is being done during the study is similar or is exactly what was approved. So that you don't reach midway the study and you go astray and you start forging data and you start going against the patient rights. And aside from inspections, we have post approval processes. There's many times a protocol be amended based on the information that is coming in. The protocol can be amended. So that's why you see that we have amendments, and amendment responses are also reviewed, so that in the event that something has to be changed in a clinical trial, the change is approved. You don't just wake up and say, I was giving these guys 5 milligrams and now I saw that it was not good enough, so I changed to 10 milligrams. That change has to be approved by the National Drug Authority. So that is basically what happens in clinical trials. We have the initial application that is reviewed, and when it is approved, we have post-approval processes, which include GCP, good clinical practice inspections, where you inspect the site while the study is going on or after the study has ended. We have amendments and renewals. Then finally, received and reviewed by NDA regularly. So one of the conditions of conducting a clinical trial is you submit safety reports to NDA within 7 days. Within 7 days after that happened. Now this, unlike in clinical practice, this is mandatory. It is not something that the clinical trial investigator can do without. It's not like they have an option. They must be able to report this, because this is a drug that is being studied in the. It should be mitigated within that time. So we receive safety reports from all these clinical trial sites, all these clinical trial clinical trials that are going on all over the country, and we review them. The review of the safety information in a clinical trial is similar to the pharmacovigilance, just that here we are looking at a clinical trial setting. So that we make a decision in the event that you have a drug and you're conducting a clinical trial, and 2-3 weeks in, you're having deaths after deaths. Almost everyone you're giving your drug is dying. There has to be something done. We cannot let it go on because you have an approval. Yet the safety information coming in is showing that the drug could be dangerous. So that's what happens when you send an application to NDA for a clinical trial. You could get a ticket, or we could request you for additional information, which is a query, or we could reject the clinical trial. And the reasons for rejecting could be as simple as the science does not match, or we don't agree with the patient's safety is not being taken care of, and all the data that you're trying to find out has already been done elsewhere. So there's no need for you to subject patients to a drug, yet what you're trying to figure out has already been done elsewhere. So that's it about clinical trials. I will try to wrap up with the other 2 units so that I don't take much more of your time and we have time for questions. So we have a research unit in the Directorate as well. The research unit is responsible for conducting operational research. Now, as you all know, that this is an institution that is based on safety and quality and efficacy of drugs. So many of the decisions we make have to be informed by either law or science. You cannot go ahead and take a decision as an authority without any basis. So it's either a legal requirement or there is reason as to why the science. So India has a research unit which conducts some kind of research, mainly it's operational research, that is used to inform the regulatory decisions that are taken here. For example, let me just go through probably what the research unit does. Then I'll give an example to wrap it up. So we have research activities that are managed through this unit, and there's collaboration with the institutions, research institutions, and academia, where we're able to conduct research together with academic institutions since they have many of the resources required. And sometimes you find some of the research is outsourced to academic institutions, and we review the data so that we can be able to make regulatory decisions and know what exactly is going on out there. I'll give an example of a research that has been done. Sometime back, the NDA increased verification fees to 12% for certain products that had alternatives being manufactured in Uganda. The imports had an increase. They increased the verification fees on the imports. So NDA did a research to figure out what the effect was on that on that decision, and I think the results showed that yes, there was less importation of those drugs, but the industries here could not sufficiently supply, could not satisfy the whole market. So, and that gives recommendations to NDA on what to do. That gives recommendations to the government on how to handle that. Or I think there was a time there was a research that was done on counterfeits, on which products are being counterfeited and which most counterfeited. So those are some of the things that NDA needs to find out so that we don't guess. You don't come out and say, I think ceftriaxone doesn't work. No, there has to be data to show that these complaints. So some of them may be observational, some of them may be just operational, just to show that what we are doing on is not based on hearsay. We are not politicians who are just going to base on crowds, but we need to base on specific scientific data. And finally, Medicines Information Unit. This is a unit that deals with control of publication and advertisement relating to drugs. And we do also campaigns against drug and substance abuse. So I'll talk most about the control of advertisements relating to drugs, and I'll say very little about drug and substance abuse since I'm not an expert there, but I think one of my colleagues, Dr. Veronica, is on the call. In the event that there's a question about drug and substance abuse, I think she will be able to answer. But now about advertisement or advertisement, depending on what you want to call it. The main activities here are vetting and approval of the adverts, monitoring of the adverts on the market, and then enforcement. So what happens is this: every advert that goes out that is relating to drugs, that can be a poster, a flyer, a billboard, audio advert, radio advert, anything anything that provides descriptive matter about a drug has to be approved by NDA. This is embedded in the NDA Act, Section 33. So what NDA does here is we receive adverts and we vet them and approve or reject the adverts, and they go out to the public in the different forms. I'm sure many of you know what marketeers do. Many of you are probably marketing drugs right now. Most of the things that the marketeers use, the flyers, the the literature, these t-shirts, pens, and the like, all those are approved by NDA before they are used. The main reason for that is to make sure that the information being provided is accurate, it is balanced, and it's going to help someone to make a rational about it. So of course, in regulation, wherever you give an approval, you have to monitor whether what you approved is exactly what happens in the market. And the last one is what? Enforcement, wherever there's what? Breaking of the law. So the rationale to regulate advertising is because there is a very thin line between a drug and a poison. And I'm sure all of us know that. And this time, the thin line can be caused by the information provided by the drug. So if you have an anti-malarial and you call it an anti-cancer, the chances are that the patient who has cancer is now receiving a poison because you have called it an anti-cancer, yet it's not an anti-cancer. Now, what happens here is the information being provided has two different audiences. We have the public and we have the healthcare profession. So for the public, there's information that can be given to the public and would be received and understood by the public as should be. But the healthcare professionals receive different information, because it's the same way as a pharmacist. You know that there's an over-the-counter drug that can be accessed by the public, but there's a prescription-only drug that the public should not be accessing without a prescription, that needs the expertise of a healthcare provider. For example, information that goes out to the public has to be about over-the-counter drugs. We do not expect someone to come with a prescription drug and advertise it to the public, because either way, it has to be prescribed to them. So that is information that will only go to the healthcare providers. Then the other one, adverts going to the public, will be vetted to ensure that the information going to the public is good enough and can help the public make rational decisions about the drugs. So that is the rationale as to why NDA has to regulate what is going out to what is happening in advertising. Then, so what happens is the applicant makes the advert. So posters, another person will want to make a billboard. So the authority cannot decide for you what kind of advert you should make. So when you make your draft advert, the advert is presented to NDA and you apply to NDA to give you authorization to advertise. Then NDA will vet the promotional material, that is whatever it is that you're using to advertise your drug, and provide you with an approval or a rejection or a query, which is usually a request for additional information. So, but the main reason for a rejection would be, one, target audience, wrong target audience. So you find you have a product that you're describing drugs for, let's say, diseases that are mentioned in Schedule 5 of the Act, in the 5th schedule. If you have an advert that is for drugs for conditions in the 5th schedule and you want to advertise to the public, that will definitely not be approved. So the main issue is to see to it that the information going out is going to help the patient or the health worker to make a rational decision, and is not going to be misleading to the public. So that is all I had for you today. I and my colleagues will be receiving questions. I don't know whether there are any questions in the chat yet. I could just go through those few, then I'll give a chance to any of my other colleagues to answer. I'll start with Dr. Chin too, asking what a protocol is. A protocol is a document that describes all that is going to be done in a clinical trial. I think that is the best way I can explain it. So what you have in what we call a research proposal, or a protocol is something similar, but it describes the objectives of the to happen in that study, described in the protocol. Then clinical trials for herbal medicines. As we mentioned at the start, that NDA regulates both vet and human medicines. For herbal medicines, there are clinical trials. The clinical trials for herbal medicines are also regulated by NDA, and we actually have a few that are going on currently. And the reason why we are currently encouraging herbal medicine manufacturers to do clinical trials, because that is the best way you can confirm that your product actually works. So currently, I think there's even a national program that is the CONAT program under the Ministry of Science and Technology that is trying to push clinical trials in herbal medicines to see to it that our products that are made here locally, that are herbal, can be approved and registered for conditions with evidence from a clinical trial, because that is the evidence that can give you that can talk about whether the drug works or not. So those are also there, Dr. Lutloti. The herbal clinical trials for herbal medicines are also regulated here and are conducted, and some are being conducted as we speak. The issue of drug inputs, I think that will be answered by Directorate, since here we don't deal with imports. And what of these hawkers that sell drugs in commuter buses? Those are illegal. Among the forms of advertising of drugs, hawking is not allowed, I think, anywhere in the world. So hawking of drugs, whether on a bicycle, in a bus, in a car, on the streets, in traffic jam, we are supposed to ensure that we get those people out of the public. That's one of the roles of NDA, to make sure that these hawkers and illegal advertisers are removed. Does a city application require a payment of a prescribed fee? Yes, almost all the things all the applications to NDA require a payment of a prescribed fee, because that's what the law prescribes, that there will be a prescribed fee, and those fees can be found in the NDA fees regulation. Yeah, there's Voice of Wisdom decided to describe what a protocol is. Thank you very much. Can one report rashes as an ADR? That I'll say yes to that, and I'll ask probably when ODPO comes in to talk about pharmacovigilance. He will explain more on that. But yes, a rash is an if you go to the description of the definition of an ADR, an untoward occurrence that happens when you're taking a drug. So you have a rash. The essence of the drug was not to give you a rash, and it has happened after you've taken the drug. So yes, a rash can be reported as an adverse drug reaction. What control does NDA have on herbal medicine advertisement? We have such that we are doing regarding herbal advertisement, because there are very many people out there advertising their drugs or their products as herbal products, and we have had a number of engagements with the manufacturers of the products. So what NDA is doing is a you look at the stakeholders involved, the manufacturers, the public, the media, And we try to engage all these because first of all, they have to know what they're doing, that what they're doing is wrong, or they have to know how to do it correctly. Then secondly, we have an enforcement arm that swings into action in the event that people have broken the law. So after we've engaged and warned and tried to get everyone to go into the right way, the next thing is enforcement, and that's done by the Directorate of Inspectorate and Enforcement, and it also happens with adverts. So Mazinga is asking on drug promotion, is it not positive health promotion if, say, an advert for malaria campaign runs for Coartem? Can't one advertise a brand, say, of herbal products, for example, Ginsomin? All right. Public health promotion versus advertising. Now, the essence of an advert, one may be to inform, or one may be to lead to the use of the drug. But if at all there's an advert talking about use of mosquito nets to prevent malaria, that may not, since they're not talking about any drug, may not need to come to NDA. Even if any product is mentioned in an advert, that advert has to be approved by NDA, because one, the drug, there are two issues: the drug and the information. The drug may not be registered. So use claiming that I have a product, Coartem, that is supposed to be used for malaria. One, is the product registered? That's the first question, because it could have been removed from the market, deregistered, and if the public does not know, at the end of the day, they'll be being led into the wrong direction. Secondly, the information being provided. The reason why we vet is because of the information. You may have your product. Let me give an example. Some of us may be medical representatives, and we have you come and present your product as the best product for treatment for a specific. You want to make sales. So some of the things that you say to the public, convincing them that your product is the best, may not be true, and your product may not even be the best. So that has to be vetted as well. But also in any kind of campaigns against specific diseases, we've had many. You've had malaria campaigns, Ovulamu, about HIV, the campaigns during the COVID-19 pandemic. They never mention specific drugs because they expect the drugs to be prescribed by a healthcare profession. So even with the campaign, you don't expect the patient to be able to treat themselves with a specific drug. Then advertising a herbal product, that also has to be approved by NDA. If you're advertising a product, maybe one day we shall have a CME to talk about herbal medicine regulation, because there are a number of questions that can come from there. Between what a product is, what a preparation is. Then there are some that are just like Ginsomin is it a herbal product in this case, or this is now just Ginsomin as a natural extract. So there's that. Dr. Lutoti was giving advice. So beyond reporting ADRs, how else can other stakeholders expected to ensure pharmacovigilance? I'll leave that question for my colleague Dr.Pius, who is an expert in pharmacovigilance. Is it required to provide safety data for herbal products or nutraceuticals prior to registration? Yes, it is. It is required to provide safety data. Some safety data. It may, for herbal products, it is not as, it may not be as much as the other products, but there has to be some kind of safety. So how many participants do I need for a clinical trial on herbal product? the number of participants for a clinical trial are determined by the phase of the clinical trial. So there's no specific number for a specific study. It depends on but it's not specific, but there's an estimate. And also the number of participants in a study are determined by the statistical analysis. So it's the experts in statistics and the epidemiology things who determine that this number of participants will give a statistically significant result. So that is not determined by the authority, but it's the experts who deal with that, regardless of whether the study is in herbal or in conventional medicines. So ODPO will have to talk about the components of pharmacovigilance system. I see Dr. Ojoti has asked clarification on that. And the next one also seems to be to do with pharmacovigilance. So I think, Bill, if it's okay, we can have Dr. Francis ODPO answer the questions relating to pharmacovigilance, so that, because he's the expert, so that as the discussion goes on, he can give more light on that. Bill, is that?
Thank you very much, Dr. Pius, for the wonderful presentation and response to the questions that have been raised. I think at this point we can welcome Dr. Bio Francis to respond to the questions that have been raised on pharmacovigilance. And as he comes, he should clarify as well, which did not come out, that how different and similar pharmacovigilance and post-market surveillance. Thank you.
Hello. I hope you can hear me. Am I?
Yes.
All
Yes,
right.
you are. Yes, yes.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Pius, for that thorough presentation. You have literally made our work or my work a bit easier. I'm just going to hit on a few of the things that I have noticed. One, just in a summary, pharmacovigilance deals with safety of medicines and how safely medicines can be used. I can hear I think someone has not muted.
Dr. Francis, just a moment, you'll continue. I've been trying to mute as a co-host, but I'm failing to mute. Jolly Justin, if you're hearing us, kindly mute, or any of the can try. I've been trying, but it's failing to mute. The voice is coming up consistently.
Okay, can I resume?
Okay, continue. It has gone down. I hope it will not come again. Thank you. Sorry for the inconvenience.
It's okay, it's understandable. Yeah, so as I was saying, in summary, deals with protecting or ensuring safety of whoever is using medication, and this comes from different stakeholders, those that are involved in drugs. This starts right from the manufacturer, or what we call the marketing operation holder, to the distributors, the wholesalers, retailers, and then to the service delivery points, the hospitals, pharmacies, drug shops, and then the service providers, the healthcare workers, and the caretakers, and of course, including the patients. So all these stakeholders are important in pharmacovigilance. Of course, not leaving out the national regulator. Yeah. So in a nutshell, pharmacovigilance deals with ensuring safety of patients or safety of consumers of drugs. And this mandate is given to NDA under Section 35, subsection 1A of the National Drug Policy and Authority Act. The regulation for pharmacovigilance is regulation number 37, 2014. You can check that out in our website, or you can even just regulation it will offer. You can read that and then get more details. Dr. Bill asked me to explain the difference between pharmacovigilance and post-marketing surveillance. Ideally, post-marketing surveillance actually falls under pharmacovigilance. That is the theoretical aspect of it. However, in Uganda, we treat the two different. Pharmacovigilance are activities that come after the drug has been registered. Dr. Pius had been talking about, took you through what we call clinical trials. Now, clinical trials, those are the activities from the lab where you're playing with the chemicals, compounds, and when you develop a molecule, you go into the animals, the rats, and then from there you now go into the humans, starting with the healthy ones, which are your target population. So all those activities you do before the drug is granted market entry for use. There you cannot still talk of pharmacovigilance. So pharmacovigilance starts now the moment all that information on the drug is evaluated, and then the regulator says this drug is okay, it can go to the market. So the marketing authorization is granted. Now that's when pharmacovigilance begins. Now pharmacovigilance, like I said, in Uganda deals specifically only with safety aspects of the drug. However, there is also another aspect of medicine called quality. You know that medicines are chemicals. And so because they're chemicals, they are a bit, I don't want to use the word sophisticated, but their quality is usually, their quality can go bad anytime. So because of that, the quality of medicines have to be monitored right from the point of manufacture up to the point of use. So when these drugs are released into the market, we also have to actively follow them up until when it is used to ensure that their quality is what is expected. So in Uganda, we conduct post-marketing surveillance in two main aspects. One is the active quality surveillance, where we go into the market, pick samples, buy these samples from the shelves, the very same shelves to analyze the quality to find out if the quality still meets the quality parameters. And then the other aspect of post-marketing surveillance we do is relying on feedback, what we call retrospectively. Now, we get feedback from you, maybe in form of a complaint that this product is behaving ABC, there's changed appearance, it's not working, and so on. So there we suspect that the quality has deteriorated. So what we do, we go pick some samples of that, and then if the manufacturer is a local manufacturer, we go to their facility, obtain some retention samples, and then take these samples and analyze them to find out if the quality is still okay. We rule out that before we put other aspects of maybe storage and so on, we bring that. So that's what post-marketing surveillance is. It focuses on the quality of products. Meanwhile, pharmacovigilance focuses on the safety of products and also advises on the safe use of drugs. Yeah, so that being said, I've been following the discussion, and in the chat section, there are some questions which I picked that were related to pharmacovigilance. One of them, I think, was asked by Mr. Patrick Collins Emopus. If I pronounce your name badly, forgive me, but I'll try my best. So he asked, besides reporting ADRs, ADR drug reactions, I hope you still remember that. So besides reporting ADRs, what can we do to ensure pharmacovigilance? I think he meant to ask which other pharmacovigilance activities there. If you look at, if you still remember the definition of that relates to four. One, you detect, then you assess. The assessment helps to understand, and then after understanding, you're supposed to come up with the measures of prevention, either adverse drug reactions or any other medicine-related problems. Okay, so there are more activities other than just reporting AD errors. So the other activities of pharmacovigilance, some of these are specific to the different stakeholders. Like I told you, there are so many different stakeholders involved with pharmacovigilance. Now, as NDA, one of the requirements that your marketing authorization or trying to bring your markets and your products on the marketing authorized, you are obligated to undertake what we call post safety surveys. In other words, you are given the right to market the product. However, regularly you have to conduct safety studies. Now, these safety studies will help you to pick out or to identify some of what we call rare effects of the drugs. You know, when the drug is still new, there are some effects that maybe belong to manifest, so you may miss those out. So these studies will help to pick out those rare and occurring effects of the drug. And also some of the effects that usually happen in very low frequencies that you may tell me to post safety studies, post-operation safety studies, including actually efficacy or quality studies. So this helps you as first of all as the marketing authorization holder or as the manufacturer to continuously improve your product. And so it also to pick out risks associated with the product as early as possible before you subject or expose people to this drug or the risk associated with the drug. And then the other activities of pharmacovigilance, which actually you, the healthcare workers, can do is what we call causality assessment. Now, causality assessment deals with assessing what has happened or what we call the event. For example, you take an anti-malarial, then you experience skin rash. So you now want to ascertain, is this rash related to the product, to the drug that you took? You undertake some several steps to come to arrive at the conclusion that yeah, drug was associated with this product, is the one that caused this event or that complaint the patient reported to you. So causality assessment is another key activity that you as a healthcare worker can undertake. And then the other is what we call signal detection. Now, what is a signal? A signal is a new safety information on a product or a known effect of a product but happening in another way. I give an example. How do they arrive? How do they detect that these products like the sildenafil and so on could actually be used for erectile dysfunction to improve performance down there? Now, those products like the sildenafil and so on were actually initially used to treat the managed attention, but later they realized that this product was causing another effect down there. So that effect is what I'm calling a signal, a new information on the drug. So this information may not necessarily be a bad information, may not necessarily be good information, it can be either way. Okay, so it is through this signal, through assessment of this safety data that can help you identify something new on the product. Remember, I told you there are what we call rare effects. Through assessment of the safety data, you can identify these rare to become a signal. Now, once you identify a signal, there's also what we call risk mitigation measures. Now, once you identify that this drug is associated with this risk, you don't stop there. You are supposed to come up with what we call risk minimization measures or risk management measures. So these can be different. It depends on the risk at hand and then how this risk is being presented. And also maybe the associated factors you also need to identify. So, so those are the different other activities of pharmacovigilance. So They depend on who the stakeholder is, but unfortunately, most of these, for us as the regulator, we have to do it. Some of them, as healthcare workers, maybe in your different areas of practice, you may not, but it, yeah. And then Mr. Abeka Mazinga asked whether the safety data is required for herbal products or nutraceuticals prior to registration. Now, in a developed country, yes, safety data is one of the requirements drug allowed or is authorized for use. This is for all drugs. However, now in Uganda, since of course one of our roles is to encourage research and development, and also, especially we sort of waived that requirement of regarding registration, or we call it notification of herbal products. So you do not have to first go and collect all this safety information. Actually, the safety information, if you attend, Dr. Pius talked about it. The clinical trials forms one of the major reliable sources of safety data concerning medicines. Another is the laboratory tests that you do. So a herbal product, for our setting here, for herbal products, you know that information may be very hard to obtain. And also, this information actually requires so much time and so much resources in terms of finances and so on. So, because of these complexities, we are trying to make life a bit easier for the herbal sector. So, we waive that off. But for other products, conventional products, this one is a must. They have to present that safety data if they want their drug register. And this is one of the information that we review carefully and critically before we allow the drug on the market. I hope that's clear, Mr. Becker. Dr. Stephen Lutoti asked me to take you through the components of pharmacovigilance. Pharmacovigilance, like I said, in the definition it's a bit clear, but in a nutshell, there are three major components of pharmacovigilance. One, safety data collection. You have to collect data on the safety data on the product, not one, all the products on the market. Now, this safety data can come from clinical trials. This safety data comes from what we call spontaneous reporting. Spontaneous reporting is the ADR reports that we receive from health centers, from healthcare workers, and so on. Okay. And then this safety data can come from research that is done on drugs. Maybe this is done by the marketing authorization holders or the owners of these drugs. So when we collect all this safety information, that informs the next step or the next component, which is analysis of the safety data. So we analyze this information. How do I analyze it? One, causality assessment. This is mostly we do it for what we call individual case series reports, those ADRs and so on, and then signal detection. And then others we look at what we assess. We look at the study reports, and then we try to pick out if there are particular safety information that are there. Okay, so once we do the safety analysis, this helps us to come up with or to identify whether the risks that this product is presenting with. Okay, now these risks, once we detect their risks, we come up with what we call signal or risk mitigation measures. So that's another component of pharmacovigilance, risk mitigation measures. Now, like I told you, depending on the nature of risk, for example, there was a time we, from all the ADR reports we are receiving, we noticed that there were many reports coming saying patients who were on hydrochlorothiazide were reporting complaints of skin ulceration or skin ulcers, cancer, and so on. But then from our assessment of those cases, we realized that one of the risk factors was actually exposure to sunshine. So what we did, we, as a risk mitigation measure, we advised the healthcare professionals through a healthcare professional letter about the risk and then also the mitigation measure, which was one, to advise these patients to wear clothing that covers most parts of their, of course, that will shield them from the direct sun rays. Okay, so that was for that particular. There are sometimes some risk mitigation measures, which includes withdrawing the drug from the market. We do recalls. Okay, sometimes we do what? We also engage the patients or the general public. We send out warning letters. Okay, I think if you remember well, there was a time we had issues of hepatitis B vaccine that was counterfeited. So when that was detected, what we did, we simply told the people who were vaccinated to go back and get a second vaccination from a reputable facility. Okay, we suspect probably they were vaccinated with water or a product that whose potency we could not verify. Okay, so there are various safety mitigation or risk mitigation measures. So those are the three components: data, safety data collection, safety data analysis, and then risk mitigation measures. Another question, I think this was by Chimera John. He was wondering if ADRs could be important in detecting the extent or prevalence to, let me try to get the question well. If I could just get that. I'm just scrolling up. People be patient a bit. Yeah. Do you think that reporting of side effects as ADRs could be important because it helps in determining the extent of prevalence? For instance, can one report constipation? Okay. The question seems to be a bit confusing. I don't know what exactly was intending to ask, but it may be using the data on ADR reporting to determine prevalence in our setting may not be, I can't be confident that this data may be reliable because one, we have a lot, the rate of reporting of ADR is so low, very, very low. A lot of things are happening, a lot of ADRs are happening, but these ADRs go undetected, they go undocumented, they go unreported to NDA. So because of this, the baseline may not, the baseline may not be really reliable. It may not capture the exact happenings that are occurring down there. So yeah, it may not be reliable. And this brings me back to emphasize the aspect of what do we report. I know Dr. Pius talked about this. We report all cases of reactions or side effects, but it still puzzles us, especially at the NDA. We always emphasize, please report all patient complaints. We don't even have to call them ADRs, we call them side effects. Yes, there's a slight difference between the two, but we always emphasize, as long as the patient has reported a complaint and this complaint involved the drug, please report. It could be as minor as nausea. It could be as minor as body weakness. It could be as minor as whatever you mentioned it, as long as a drug was used. Whether you know there is a relationship between the drug and what happened, just report that. Leave the rest for us to do the assessment to find out if there is a causal relationship whereby you should categorize it as an ADR, or there's no causal relationship whereby you should categorize it as an ADE. An ADE is adverse drug event. Okay? So report all cases that are happening. And through this way, we will one, raise the reporting rates, and then secondly, it will also help us to detect some of the cases that usually go unnoticed. And if I may also emphasize this, most times ADRs begin in a simple or minor way. And when this goes ignored, these ADRs keep worsening. So by the time you actually detect that, oh, it's a drug causing this, usually it goes to its late stages. Personally, I've been to facilities where they report cases of death, but which started as minor cases. One time last year, I was in Arua, Regional Referral Hospital, and I was told about 3 patients who died, and these patients were on anti-TBs. One came, had just had complaint of body weakness, and had come for his refill. This was ignored, was given his refill, the patient didn't make a full week, died. Then another one had a distinct how they ignored him, same case. Okay? And then the other, I think, the kidney problem, which was just starting, and then was kept on the medication before realized it, the patient also went. So, please, as long as there is a complaint, as minor as it sounds, and the patient is on medication, please come report it and try to attend to the patient, try to address that complaint as soon as possible. Let me see if there's any other question. How's the issue of drug adulteration being handled? Drug adulteration, this is a case of counterfeit. I think in that same presentation Dr. Pius gave, there's an aspect of post-surveillance. Counterfeiting falls under post-marketing surveillance, whereby you're altering either the identity or the content of the product. And once a product is counterfeited, you are strictly advised not to use it. Put it aside, inform NDA, and we shall tell you what to do. Do not use an adulterated product. Otherwise, you not know what you're using, and the risks coming with it. Probably nobody will also take accountability for that. So that may rest on you. And we also encourage you always to be alert. When you're doing your routine stock taking and so on, please, one of the things I always emphasize you to do is visual inspection to see if there's any difference in the drugs and so on. Let's go to next. We see ads running on foreign channels, DSTV accessible here for prescription drugs. I think this should have gone to Dr. Pius. He's the man for adverts. NDA has to regulate UCC. This is being of ambitious. We have a mandate to only stop some drugs. The only thing we can have with the UCC is an understanding, working in a friendly relationship so that they can act on the product, the media houses that air these adverts. So unfortunately, we cannot regulate UCC. Let me see if there's another question. Which unit in product safety manages post-marketing surveillance? Now, post-marketing surveillance is a unit on its own, and this unit falls under Directorate of Inspectorate and Enforcement. I've been talking about post-marketing surveillance because I have worked there. I did the post-marketing surveillance for quite some time, so I am quite well versed with that. And then is a screen being shared, members? This is not about. Okay. This does. Oh, okay. I think if there's another question, one here from Mayuni, Dr. Pius, kindly share the notes for purpose of chewing card. Okay. Dr. Pius will share this. Tell us about special situation with the pharmacovigilance doctor and about the role of QPPV. Also some cancer drugs and treatment modalities are new. Okay, QPPV. Well, I don't know how we forgot to mention that. Actually, it is one of our requirements for marketing authorization is that before we grant anyone a marketing authorization, before we give you permission to market products in Uganda, one, you must appoint a qualified person for pharmacovigilance. That's the QPPV. Now, this QPPV must have a background in pharmaceuticals, and then secondly, he or she must be a resident in Uganda. So this QPPV is going to be responsible for the safety of the product. So that means that this QPPV has to set up a pharmacovigilance system in the company. And this system should be able to pick out all safety issues, all safety concerns of the drugs they are marketing in Uganda, and forward this information to the National Drug Authority. Secondly, he has to liaise with the marketing authorization holder, that's for the products being imported into the country, so that in case of any safety issue or quality issue, the manufacturer can address it. Now, one other thing that I need to make it clear to you is that any safety, any quality issue of the product is not a responsibility of the regulator. It is the obligation holder or the owner of the drug to ensure that their product is safe, is of the expected quality, and it works. Okay? So it's not the regulator's role to ensure these products actually work. It's not the regulator's work to ensure these products are safe. It's the regulator's role to ensure the products are efficacious. We come in as a screening tool to assess what does this product actually meet our requirements. Is it safe for use? Is it of the expected quality? Is it efficacious? If not, we don't go to the lab to start answering why it is not safe. We throw the ball back to the marketing authorization holder to explain to us why the product is causing ABCD and how the marketing authorization holder intends to address that so that this does not happen again. And then thirdly, the assurance that this will not happen anymore in a CAPA form. And we review that. I hope that is clear. So one of the obligations of any manufacturer, any marketing authorization holder, is to ensure that their product is okay. That if this product is okay, it's okay. Bring it. You can bring it to them. Please monitor its quality. And of course, now once you grant them that, we cannot just back. We have to actively actually out and find out, are there any issues with the products that we authorized to be marketed? Are there any issues that are happening with these products we are allowed to be used in our population? If yes, which problems? Okay? Which drugs are those problems? And then we weed out such products. We would pick them off and ask the manufacturer, that's why it's happening and how that can be addressed. That clear. Hope I explained the roles of the QPPV, setting up a pharmacovigilance system in the company to monitor the safety of the product, pick out any safety issues, any quality issues, any inefficacy issues of the product they are marketing, and then address this. Report to the NDA, report to the manufacturer or the marketing authorization holder, and they come to the solutions so that we can be sure that the problems have been addressed and then allow the some kind of modality. Okay, I don't know what that was the question. It was okay, I think Dr. Lutoti is just thanking us and on behalf of PSU. Okay, thank you for appreciating our work, Dr. Lutoti. Let me see if there are more questions. I think, yeah, that was it. Unless if there's any other thing that I have not clarified, or if there's anything that's still confusing, I'm still here. You can ask. Otherwise, thank you. Back to you, Dr. Andy. Over from you.
Thank you Francis, for the wonderful and clarification. 7, 10, 2 hours. We can only have additional 5 minutes, only 5 minutes, and we close completely. There are any persons, only two, who can raise questions directly by putting up your hand, please. As they come, there is a question in the comment section, which is asked by someone called Bira, saying, is QPP the LTR? There's a question there. I think that you need to clarify for on that.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Bira. QPPV is not the same as LTR. QPPV, like I told you, is a qualified person for pharmacovigilance. I think that's well spelled out. This is someone responsible only for the safety and the quality of the drug. They have to actively conduct all pharmacovigilance activity concerning the product. Now, an LTR, a local technical representative, simple English, is the owner, is the local of the drug in country. LTR, now, like I told you before, for example, if you're manufacturing your drug in India, you cannot just be marketing your drug in Uganda while being stationed. Or we need someone within the country who will be in charge of that drug, who will be shipping this drug in, doing the marketing and so on, as well as being responsible for carrying out any other activity. This may not be necessarily safety related. Okay, all the other activities of this drug. So they are literally like the owner of the product. We know the right owner is the authorization holder, but we cannot allow them to be marketing their products remotely. So they have to have someone within the country in charge, who will be in charge of that product. And in case of any problem, usually, if this problem is not safety related, we go. If the problem is safety related, we go through the QPPV. We address it, we raise it to them, and then this QPPV does what communicates with the MAH, and then they come up with solutions which they submit to us. LTR. This, yes, if they don't have the QPPV, we can also raise it through them. However, we expect that all LTRs must have QPPV. I hope that's clear. And usually an LTR is a company. It's not a single person. But a QPPV is an individual within the LTR, within that company, that is bringing this product and marketing it. I hope that's clear.
Okay, yeah, that is very clear. I am not seeing any other hands up.
I would like to ask just one question.
Okay, please go ahead. You need to put up.
I'm kindly inquiring, like for instance, DTG is now known to cause hyperglycemia. So if a patient is initiated on DTG and sugar levels increase, so do I go ahead and record that as an ADR or not is already known?
Good. Yes, that's an ADR. And ADR does not mean that it's only those effects that are not known. No? ADRs may be known, they may be unknown. Okay? And ADRs, like Dr. Pius said, sometimes actually an ADR may not have a direct association with the product, but it happened after the drug was used. So still you need to report, as long as, I remember emphasizing this, as long as that event happened after the drug was used. That could be a drug event, an adverse event. Now, if that adverse event has an association with the drug that was used, that's when it becomes an adverse drug event or an adverse drug reaction. So all those events that happen where the drug was used, please report them, whether they are known or they are unknown, whether they are serious or they are minor. I hope that's clear.
Yes. Okay, thank you very much. Just there's now 1 minute remaining for us to close. In 30 seconds, I would like to ask this question from my side. The pharmacovigilance interventions usually come after some damages have been caused on the ground, like maybe patients dying, permanent disabilities and all that. Is there any instances or situations where someone is held, someone takes the legal responsibility for such occurrences?
Wow. First and foremost, the purpose of pharmacovigilance is not for any legal or for any litigation or whatsoever. No. The purpose of pharmacovigilance is to detect any risks associated with the medicines as early as possible, before damages are caused, before cases of death and so on come up. Now, those cases where you see people first die and so on, that is a case where people are reluctant to report. People see things happen, but they ignore it. And then it's only when they see someone has become crippled, maybe people have started dying, that's when they open their eyes and say, oh, this drug actually could be causing that. But if we take pharmacovigilance serious and we proactively monitor patients on medication, I can assure you we will not register cases of death before we take actions. You remember the case we talked about in in West Africa where several kids died and so on before it was actually detected there was a drug. It's because of the reluctance of people and also the pharmacovigilance system. I'm always proud that we don't have any such history in Uganda. It's because of probably the work we're doing, the work healthcare workers are doing to ensure that whenever they start noticing some trends, they speak up. And this also opens up our eyes. I can give you an example of recently we had with gentamicin around 2018. There were many reactions that happened. And when we followed up we realized about 3 kids had actually died, but they were not documented. But this we got to know when we followed up the cases. And these were many reactions that were not recorded. But when 2 people took it upon themselves and reported these cases to us, because of the nature of the reaction, we had to follow up. We had to make an investigation as early as possible. And that saved hundreds and thousands of people who were using the same product. And we had to, make communications. We had to immediately quarantine the product, recall it, and those cases stopped. So that is the essence of active monitoring and immediate reporting of anything that you observe. Don't wait. You say a product has changed the color, but you still insist on using it. What are you up to? Why are you exposing people? Okay? So when you notice something, please don't keep quiet. Speak up. Speak up as soon as possible. That when you speak up, it saves very many lives out there. Drugs, like Dr. Pius said, it's literally a very thin line between drugs and poisons. Anytime what saves life can actually take that same life. It becomes poison. So if you keep quiet over these things, you are going to cause more harm to the patient than the good that you tend to cause. So as early as possible. Let's detect these cases before they reach the serious cases where we're recording deaths and so on. It is usually very sad when you receive a report, an ADR report involving death. Those are cases you don't want to receive. Let me stop there. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Pius, for the clarifications. I mean, Dr. Francis, for the clarifications and the questions, and also the elaborations, particularly on the areas of pharmacovigilance. We have come to the end of this session, colleagues. Thank you for participating in the meeting, in the call, for turning up in big numbers. To our dear presenters, on behalf of the entire pharmacists, we are so much grateful and appreciative to this wonderful and productive session we have held. We have learned a lot, and we hope that next time when we reach out for further inquiries, discussions, or any need to work together in any way, that will come ahead of time. You will be there for us. And that our Secretary General, Dr. Lutoti, I recognize your presence in the meeting. You've been active in the comment section. Thank you for walking the journey with us this evening. Dr. Pius and Dr. Francis, we're indebted to you. I will hope that after this call, you'll be able to share the slides, and then I can be able to forward them to the groups for to regurgitate, as one of our colleagues had stated. Our dear intern pharmacists, this is we are continuing with the CME sessions. We are securing more. There are seniors who are requesting the intervention of Dr. Lutoti, the PSU, directly for them to respond to some of our calls, to get them to come and help us in the presentations to add on our knowledge. And I think Dr. Lutoti should note that when we reach out to you, should be able to support us in that. Thank you very much. I wish all of you a good night. And we'll meet again the next time we organize this. We promise that we'll be bringing it every week. Thank you. Have a good night. I call the meeting to an end at this point.
Thank you very much.